All right, everybody. I've got another very special guest for y'all this week. All right, please welcome to the show, Joe Pruett. Welcome, Joe.
Hello, hello, hello.
So, Joe, being the first time on the show, I'm sure you've done this a million times in your career. You've had a nice, long, and successful career here. But let's do the basics, kind of like get us to the point. What's your origin story? How'd you fall in love with comics? All that kind of stuff.
Okay, my origin story. um, I first started reading comics. I'm guessing around age 6. I quickly became I would call a Marvel zombie. I was a big Marvel fan growing up. I noticed like some of my first comics. I went back and figured it out one time. Were like Marvel Spotlight 5, like the first Ghost Rider. Amazing Spider-Man 112. I remember that. Early X-Men, etc. So I just fell in love with Marvel and comics in general. I read other stuff as well, but mainly Marvel. And I do remember the first comic shop I ever went to was probably while I was in like maybe junior high. Um, it was in Athens, Georgia. We didn't have one where I grew up. And it was more of a record store, used records, used books in the comics, called Wuck Street in Athens, Georgia. And I found out years later that one of the guys I used to buy comics from, and my brother, I have a twin brother who's also in the business. We would go in there. How much is this? How much is that? I'm sure we drove the guys crazy with our constant questions. But it ended up was one of the founding members of REM, the rock band. He worked there, and
Oh,
after
wow.
years, I said, "Hey, that's that dude that we used to buy comics from." So, no, growing up, in high school, I was on the school paper staff as one of the artists and one of the writers as well. I thought I was going to be an artist at one point. And then after college, I kind of didn't know where I was going to be doing yet. I was an English major in college, which means I wasn't qualified to do much of anything. I had started reading comics. In college, I got out of comics a little bit because I discovered I needed money for booze and women. So I kind of quit buying the comics. But then at the end of my career there, I had a steady girlfriend who's now my wife. And I'd go visit her in the summer where she'll be working as a waitress, and I would be hanging out. I didn't want to hang out at her parents' house. So I found a comic shop locally there, and then got me back in again. And one of the comics I started buying, which I had never bought before, was Flaming Carrot Comics, which was from Dark Horse at the time. I'm guessing it was Dark Horse. And I found that Bob Burden, the creator of Flaming Carrot, lived in Atlanta, Georgia. I went to the University of Georgia, and found out that Bob actually went to the University of Georgia as well. And the one thing I noticed about Bob, that he's used assistants on his books, and I knew that because he credited them in his comics credit pages. And so I actually just out of nowhere just wrote him a letter, and I said, "Hey, look, I just got out of college. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. I'd love to come, be an unpaid intern or whatever it happened to be to break into the business." And to my surprise, about 3 weeks later, he calls me up and tells me to come meet him and offers me a job. And that's how I got my foot in the door originally. And then with working with Bob, I started meeting all his friends. So, again, I broke in thinking I was going to be an artist. But when your first people you meet in the business are Brian Ballin and Dave Sim and Dave Stevens and Bernie Wrightson and Al Williamson, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be an artist. I'm nowhere near good enough, and don't have the patience or the skill set to do what they do. And so I worked with Bob for a few years and decided I was going to be a writer. And so I started sent a blind submission to Caliber Comics, people who did The Crow, and where a lot of people started their career, like Mike Allred and obviously Jim Barr and a bunch of other people started their careers there. And Gary Reed, the owner of the company, called me up one day and wanted to publish my book. And while I waited around for like a year for my artist to try to do the art on the book, which he never did, I decided, well, I'm waiting for him. I'll let's become an editor. I'll start this anthology called Negative Burn. It was with my friends, and which was probably the best thing I've ever done, because Negative Burn kind of made my career to start with. And again, it's like I reached out to all the people I loved in business and say, "Hey, come do a short story, have fun," and that just blossomed into becoming a talent scout for Caliber. But not so much where I was finding new talent, so much as I was going to find the established talent to come have fun. You know, you make your money at Marvel DC, come have fun at Caliber. So no, they got to kind of point like, who can I not get? And so I got Alan Moore, and so I got the um, No Gaiman's of the world, and Mobius. You know, the guys like up and comers like Paul Jenkins and Warren Ellis and John Cassaday. It was just, it was more of a challenge. I even went so far as like, who can I not get? So I found out later my wife is from Indiana. Her second or third cousin, I'm not sure, remember, was in John Cougar Mellencamp's band when they started out. And so I actually hunted, I had her grandmother hunt down John Mellencamp's address for me. So I sent him a care package of Negative Burn. Said, hey, he was a painter. So I said, can I use one of your paintings for a Negative Burn? He, of course, never replied to me. But again, it's a challenge. Who can I not get? So worst thing I can ever say is no, or no reply at all. So from Caliber, where I started my career, then all of a sudden I ended up writing X-Men comics for Marvel. I left there and then started Desperado Publishing after I quit doing X-Men. Then partnered with Image myself, and then partnered with IDW for several years. And then when that kind of faded away, helped to found Aftershock Comics, where I came in as a publisher and the chief creative officer. And I did that for almost 10 years, 9 years. And then when I left there, about a year and a half or so ago, it's like, well, what do I want to do now? I have to keep reinventing myself. I get bored doing the same thing over and over again. Why I like doing the business side of comics. I love doing the creative side of comics. So I was like, well, I want to be a writer again. So that's why I'm starting to write. I've got stuff at Image and Boom and Bad Idea and some other places as well. And the other thing I liked doing when I was doing this for publishing, though, was the most successful thing we did was the art book line. And I said, well, I like doing that. Let's do that again. Because I want to have fun at this time of my life. And I want to work with my friends. And I don't want all the stress. So, writing, I love doing, working with our friends as artist friends, and now doing the art books, working with the Joe Jescos and the Jim Starls of the world, stuff like that. It's fun, and as a potentially, help pay my bills. I got kids in college. I got 6 kids, 5 grandkids, and they're not cheap. So I got to keep making money. But if I can make money doing what I like doing, then that's the American dream, isn't it?
I think that's everybody's dream. I would love to pick at a few things throughout that before we get into what you're doing right now. But,
Sure.
First, Negative Burn, because this was a book when I was reading up about you a little bit more that I saw like everybody's talking about. Like this is your big thing from your early career. And being that let's just say I wasn't of comic reading age at the time this book came
Sure.
out, I had never heard of it. So do you still have the rights to this book?
Yeah, it's a critter owned. I own the rights. I don't own the rights to the stories. They're all critter owned, but I know I have the title. I redid a second series of Negative Burn at Image when I was doing Desperado Publishing. I will admit, when I started the first Negative Burn, I was told it would never go anywhere. It's a black and white anthology with no theme, no unifying theme. And I was like, no, hold my beer. Here's what we're going to do with it. And so I basically went 50 years. I went 50 issues and quit on my own terms, and won nominated for Eisner's and Harvey Awards and all kinds of awards for it. And, again, like I said, I made my career in that aspect. And so I love doing that. And I did the second time through Image and then the Desperado. I will admit, my heart wasn't in it like it was the first time. The first time it was a passion.
Yeah.
And I think it shows. The second time, I started off strong, and I think it teetered out because I wasn't as driven as I was the first time I did it, I guess. And so I was like, I don't think it had the same quality as the first series did, which I hate to admit. I've actually played around bringing it back yet again. With quality and effort. And I've actually had a major company ask me recently if I wanted to bring it back. And actually 2 companies have talked to me about it. And I've also thought about going crowdfunding with it. But let's be honest, anthologies, which is in my blood. I did an anthology at Aftershock called Shock, which I think I'm very proud of. I did 2 volumes of that, big hardcovers.
Those are great hardcovers, everybody.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes.
I enjoy doing them, but they're a lot of work. It's like doing anthologies. Like you're dealing with so many different creators and so many different stories. It's like doing 8 to 10 titles at one time as an editor, and then there's always going to be that one artist or that one creator who doesn't quite get that deadline right, you know, and so it's constantly hunting down the work. And but I love doing them, so I'm sure I'll come back to it. I was actually in talks, and I don't know if I should talk about it, with Marvel one time because I wanted to do Epic Illustrated, which is they were anthology, their heavy metal, answer back in the '80s, and I thought that was going to happen at one point not too long ago, and then Marvel Legal kind of shut it down. So, and I was really disappointed with that because I was excited. I'd already reached out to a lot of the original creators and had started talking about doing a big omnibus collection or doing new material as well. And it's not going to happen. So, disappointing. But that doesn't mean I can't take that same energy and put it towards Negative Burn or something new. You know, I like to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, I think I see that you did collected editions of it a few times throughout the years.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that it would be really tough to do that again today.
Yeah. If I was to try to do a collective Negative Burn, I'm not saying I can't do it, but I have to go
Yeah.
to every single creator and ask permission and figure out here's your payment, what your percent would be and stuff like that. And then again, I'm not saying I can't do that. I'm not saying I will.
Hmm.
I think at this point it might just be more fun to do something fresh and new.
Yeah. I could see that. It'd be a lot of legalese and paperwork going into that, but
Yeah.
it's yeah. If you ever had the passion for it, I think that's something that'd be worthwhile because I couldn't believe how many articles I read about how this was the book back in the mid '90s that everybody should be reading. So.
Oh, great, thanks.
And then I kind of wanted to pick at because when we first started this podcast, it was around the time when you were introducing Aftershock. I think about a year or two into me starting this podcast,
Okay.
and you were one of the publishers that I was really attracted to. First and foremost, to be honest, because you got Cullen Bunn on board, and one of my favorite
Oh,
writers.
he was one of my
But you
first
guys
guys.
were doing, and you guys had like Donnie Cates on board and a bunch of other people, and I just found it so interesting that you were doing these cool creator-owned books, but they all felt like books that nobody else would do. So I guess my question is, what was when you were doing Aftershock? What was kind of the mission statement going into it?
Well, after shot, we wanted to, like you just said, do the stuff that nobody else is doing. We didn't want to do a superhero universe. You can't compete with Marvel DC, so why bother? I grew up, again, I told you I grew up a Marvel zombie, but it came in the '80s when I hit high school, or maybe even late junior high. That's when I discovered independent comics, the indie comics. I discovered Cerebus and ElfQuest at the time, or PC Comics, Pacific Comics, Eclipse Comics. Don McGregor's and Paul McGlace's Saber was one of the big things I remember like loving at the time. There was stuff Bruce Jones was doing at Pacific Comics, Twisted Tales and Alien Worlds. Rocketeer by Dave Stevens. You know, Star Slayer. But I just fell in love. I was like, wow, there's something outside besides superhero comics. So in the '80s, I went from super Marvel Zombie to being a superhero. Excuse me, being an independent, connoisseur and buying everything that was coming from the indie guys. And so in the '90s, again, that followed me into the '90s with Caliber, to the point where if I wanted to buy a comic book at Marvel, for instance, I went to the comic shop, I would make sure, I was like, I hope nobody sees me buying this. 'Cause I was a nose up in the air snob about, oh, this is Marvel, you see. Especially the '90s stuff. I didn't really care a lot for the '90s stuff at Marvel. But the late '90s, at Marvel, I remember the first book I really started buying again was Kevin Smith and Joe Quesada's Daredevil. And that's when I would sneak in and buy when nobody was looking. And then, like I said, when I left Caliber, all of a sudden, I don't know how, I was like, what? I'm writing X-Men? How did that happen? It kind of happened because there's an editor, the article in a UK magazine that Mike Perkins, artist Mike Perkins, who did work for me at Caliber, found. And in the article, it mentioned that some unknown editor at Marvel was looking for new voices, and they actually specifically mentioned, myself and David Mack and Brian Bendis. We're all at Caliber. Phil Hester, it might have been Phil Hester. Yeah, Phil Hester, Mike Perkins, and one or two others I can't remember. And so we had like a little powwow. Said who's the editor? And somebody identified an editor named Jason Liebig, who ended up being my main X-Men editor for a while, but you might know him now because if you ever watch the History Channel, like Foods That Made America or this new Henry Winkler show, he's one of the experts they always have talking. Like he's a candy expert and the brand expert. So he's on all these cooking shows and history shows now, which I think is hilarious. Good for him. That's great. I still keep in touch with him. So I just called him up and he asked me some stuff. That's how I ended up at Marvel. He liked what I did, but he said it wasn't him in the article. But I'm sorry, I'm way off course with your question. Your question was, okay, what was your question again? I'm sorry.
We started off with Aftershock and was the mission statement kind of to
mission statement. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we just want to do stuff that, nobody else is doing. We want to be focused on story first. That's what our mission statement is all about story, and the high quality creators and stuff. Like when we started the company, I was the publisher, and I brought in Mike Moritz to be our editor in chief because I didn't want to do it myself. And Mike was one of my editors at X-Men, and I always kept in touch with Mike. He had moved over to DC, and then Batman for several years, coming back to X-Men. And so when he came in, we had kind of a relationship where we fed off each other. No, I went out and said we needed window dressing, so I went and got Brian Azzarello and Palmiotti and Amanda Connor and Cullen Bunn and Garth Ennis. My buddies. No, Cullen was not my buddy at the time. But no, he became my buddy afterwards because I recruited him because he was hot at the time. And I liked his work, and I know you did too because you just mentioned that. And Mike, was a guy who kind of found, it's kind of like we reverse roles. I was the guy who brought in the big talent. Mike was more on DC, but I'm the one that was bringing in the big talent. And Mike was bringing the Marguerite Bennett and the Donny Cates that he helped discover. He was bringing the new talent. So that's not how I thought it would go. I thought we'd reverse. I'll be in the new talent. He'll bring the established talent, but it kind of reversed that way. But yes, we just want to do something, that we want to read. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and that's what I always found interesting when I was going through my previous catalog back then was when you got to Aftershock, I was like, man, there's no other books like this. Like I think of, I eventually became a huge Donny Cates fan and everything. And when I saw Rednecks, I was like, what is this book? And I believe that's when he did Image, but then he did the...
Rednecks came from Skybound. Baby Teeth. This is book with
Baby Teeth's the one he did with you. That's right. I saw these two books coming out at the same time, and I'm like, these are just so widely different from everything coming out. Even though they may have some themes that we see in other books, I didn't see these types of books happening at other places, and I just fell in love with it. And then with Colin doing Dark Ark and a bunch of other stuff, I just eventually became one of those guys that was buying almost everything Aftershock because I thought what you guys were doing was so interesting. And you eventually get to the point you mentioned Shocked. I'm guessing you did that book because it was probably a great idea to do, but also it seems like anthology work is in your heart and soul. Was that something you came up with? Like we should do a yearly anthology as part of the industry, or did somebody else bring it up? Well,
that was something I wanted to do. The reason I did Shock, to be honest, is I had a Neil Gaiman short story with Michael Zulli that was done. And I actually had that commissioned years earlier. And it was just sitting around unused. This is, of course, before Neil's allegations and everything came out. And I was like, I have a Neil Gaiman short story here. I need to put it somewhere. So I made Shock around that original one. And then again, I did what I always want to do, Who Can I Not Get? And I'm pretty, Shock Volume 1, I'm very happy with. And surprisingly, I think Shock Volume 2 is actually even better than Volume 1. Went out and got, Gaiman was my lead for the first one. My second one, I went out and we got Ariel Stein to do a short story. From Goosebumps to do a short story in Shock Volume 2. And of course I went and got my friends, the Jim Starlins and Colin, of course. And it also gave me an excuse to throw up my own stories in there, one in each issue. Because at the time of Aftershock, I wasn't really, I did Black Eyed Kids for 15 issues. And then I was kind of asked to step away from being a writer and just focus on the business, which, It wasn't something I was really thrilled with. So, Shock gave me a chance to just throw a couple short stories in, relatively unnoticed. I didn't ask permission; I just did it. But I need my creative outlet. Again, I
Yeah.
broke in as a creator, transitioned into business, but always stayed a creator. And then when I helped found my own company, one reason I wanted to help find Aftershock, so I got tired of jumping through hoops for the major companies and try to get stuff done. So I'll start my own company again, and I have to do that. And in the day, it was probably I had more hoops to jump through my own company than I did at Marvel DC. So that's why the first thing I came when I left Aftershock, first thing I did was I'm going to rebuild my writing career and do something I love doing.
And that kind of brings us to today, where you got a couple projects coming out. But I guess great place to start. You have a book coming out from Image called Viking Moon,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember when the press release came out for Ninth Circle, and you and a bunch of other great creators team up for this new imprint at Image.
Mm-hmm.
For people out there who may not understand, like, what's the purpose of doing an imprint like that inside of Image? Like, what's the purpose of having a Skybound inside of Image, or
Well,
people teaming up like that?
well, when I started Desperado back in the day too, originally I was with Image for the first 2 years, and that the advantage is go underneath their umbrella. You don't have to have all the frameworks as a full-fledged company. You don't have to have the staff. You don't have to have the designers. You don't have to try to get into I would say the catalogs now. But I think I'm dating myself after a couple of years because I'm talking about the diamond catalogs, which is no more.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about distribution because they already have it all set up, and they have great distribution, and they're being have the image eye of the comic means something. So you're going to get higher orders. Aftershock, we didn't go that route. We decided to do our own thing because I had partners who and investors who had money, and it takes a lot of money to do a comic book company. If you plan on being successful as a comic book company, you have to have a lot of money and be prepared to lose a lot of money. The best way, if you have $1 million to invest, I wouldn't say do that. But a lot of companies, like Aftershock, two of my partners were movie producers. One of my original partners was the CPO of Facebook. So their intent was, hey, we want to make film and TV. That's why they wanted the business. That's why they're wanting to put their money where their mouth is. And at Aftershock, we had a lot of options and interest in the properties we did. And then a lot of them they're still active. So nothing's come out yet. But when I left, we probably had 30 options going for the company, including one of my own for my Black Eyed Kids with some Australian company TV show. I don't know what happened to that. I haven't talked to them in a while. But yeah, to go underneath for a nice circle, we didn't want to be a company. We just wanted to be a group. So we didn't want to have to do all the heavy lifting to start a company, and just do something every once in a while. I'll do a book, Garth will do a book, and Marguerite will do a book, and then just put it out when we get it done, and not worry about having hit that monthly deadline, and just have fun. It's more of a side hustle. Yeah.
With that, I mean, we've seen a few books come out from the imprint there,
Mm-hmm.
but now we're on to yours, which got announced back in, what was it, June or July? And
It
that is
comes out.
Viking Moon.
It comes out on September 24th.
Yeah, so it's
Number
coming
one.
out
Yeah.
next week as you're all reading this.
Oh yeah, it is.
I remember we
Actually.
talked about it on the show back in June or July. What what is Viking Moon? I guess is the best place to start with this.
Lucky Moon's. When I started doing Black Eyed Kids, I kind of started the first horror book I ever did, and I said, well, I can try and kind of enjoy doing this. And Viking Moon, it came to me. It's just Vikings and werewolves. I started reading about the Vikings and about the fact that they actually had a settlement in Newfoundland, Canada, as early as 1,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago. how long it's been, no, 1,000 years. And way before Columbus, discovered quote quote America. And I thought it was just fascinating. And that's good. They estimate they probably only there for a few years, and like no, but then they left abruptly and just abandoned, never went back. And my thought was like, well, why did they do that? And the reality, theories are because the Native American population was overwhelming and to them, and they had skirmishes, and they were way over outnumbered, and it wasn't safe for them to stay. No, that's probably true. But my thought is like, well, why don't we do something different? Why did they really leave? And I've always been fascinated with werewolves and hordes and skinwalkers, which is in the Native American mythology. And I said, well, a werewolf is basically a skinwalker. It's a person who can transfer into another animal. And I said, well, what if we play with the mythology of the Native Americans with skinwalkers / werewolves, and say, here's the reason why the Vikings left, because it wasn't just they were overwhelmed by the Native Americans, they were overwhelmed by the supernatural. And I thought it'd just be a fun, Vikings versus werewolves. It's a good visual and a lot of fun to write. And my artist, Marcelo Fruzen, loves to draw it. So he was super excited when I reached out to him about, I want to work together again. And I said, well, I have this one idea. And and as soon as I pitched it to him, he's like, that's it. I want to do that one. That's going to be great. And he was all into the Viking culture. He was like, have you watched this movie? Have you seen this? Have you done that? And I was like, well, I've read this book. And we just, bonded right away and went to town.
So Marcelo is someone you worked with in the past then. So
I've only worked with him once. The one gig I ever did at Vertigo, back in the day was like, this is 25 years ago, probably. I did a short story for Axel Alonso for Weird Western Tales. And he picked Marcel to draw it. And I just loved his work then at the time. And then after that, he became the Hellblazer artist and became Loveless with Azzarello. He hooked up with Azzarello a lot. And I just always followed his career and always loved his work. And I've always wanted to work with him again. So I just reached out at random about trying to do something when I left Aftershock. And luckily for me, he was available and willing and wanted to do this project with me.
Well, based on the preview pages, he seems like the perfect artist for the project.
Yeah, that's great. Every day I get beautiful. Every time I get a page, I'm excited. He must be a night owl because I always get him when I wake up in the morning. So I'm on my phone in bed. I go, oh, this is great. This looks wonderful. Very nice. So it's exciting to me.
In working with him, how is the collaboration with him? Does he really get into? Do you guys go back and forth on the story? Does he put a lot
of really.
Into it? No.
Every creator artist work is different. Marcelo is pretty much we're working something I haven't done in a long time. We're working the old Marvel style, where I do a plot. I break it down by page and by panel and descriptions, but I don't put the dialogue in until he's finished, and I leave him a lot of leeway to follow my direction or not. No, I don't try to make him. I want this shot from this angle. This many people have to be in the panel, and it has to be from a bird's eye view or whatever. And I kind of leave that up to him, which he prefers. When there's other artists, I do the exact opposite. I give a lot of detail and what I want, and I do the full script, the dialogue. But this is how Marcel wanted to work, and that's fine with me. I've done it before, and it helps me. I write faster doing this for sure. But then after he's done the art, I come back and do the dialogue and say, oh, I have to back up and do that. And I can't focus going forward. I have to back up for a little bit and finish this off. But it's fun. I enjoy working on that. And we've already talked about our next project we're going to do together. We already know what it's going to be. So if this one's successful, yeah.
I don't hear a lot of people doing the Marvel style anymore. Once in a while, you see someone playing around with it. So, are there any advantages to it for you as the writer, or do you find it's more
speed? It's just speed for me because I'm trying to. Right now, I'm running 4 different projects, maybe. So it gives me speed to move into the next one. It's like an assembly line. I really wish I could just do one thing at a time and to the beginning and end like an artist would do. But reality is, I don't get paid enough to only focus on one book at a time. Cause I don't get paid. Like for doing the image, I don't get paid till couple months after the issue is out. So I wrote the script number 1 last August, and the book comes out in September. That means I get paid in November. So it's like, 15 months later before I get any kind of paycheck for it. That's not how I pay my bills. It's not how I pay my bills in a few months now. But yeah, the only advantage is more speed. And again, this is the artist you want to work with, who wants to work that way. That's the advantage too, because you get the artist you want.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong here. I've heard stories. I've never actually worked for Image, but from what I've heard, it's very similar to Kickstarter, where you kind of put everything up front, and then you just got to figure it out in the back end whether it's
Right.
successful or
Right.
not in terms of
Right.
money.
Right. Exactly. I have no idea. I mean, I might have a inkling of idea right now because I've seen the sales numbers for number 1.
Yeah.
But when I wrote it 15 months ago, am I going to ever make a dime on this? Maybe not. It's all a guess, but I was willing to do it, and because Image gives you such a leeway and freedom to do what you want to do, and we own everything. We don't have to share it, so that's an advantage too. But I want to get my name out again as a writer, and I want to do what I want to write. I don't mind writing company controlled books. It's fun. When I was doing X-Men, it was being a kid again. I was playing this playground, this sandbox I used to play as a kid, and it was a lot of fun until it wasn't, and then and I don't mind doing adaptations or whatever, but nothing's better than doing your own project. And then if you don't believe in yourself, then nobody else is going to believe in you.
Yeah, I always think as a fan, I'm always a little disappointed when somebody doesn't go on that 100-issue run that I
Well,
can
I
see
love
this
to do
big
that,
gaming
yeah.
story. But I can understand why creators don't want to do it.
No, I'm
Completely
all
see it.
for it. I like Black Eyed Kiss, for instance, was probably going to be like a 50 to 60 issue run until I was asked to pause. So, but I know the ending. I know it's going to be the middle was going to be right itself as it goes a lot of times, but I knew all the little bumps along the road, and I knew what the ending was going to be. Because I had to get on I had to do an outline for a film company. They wanted to know where it's going to end, so I wrote it all out for them. And I get on Zoom calls like this and video calls and talk to their people in Australia. One time I was talking to a director in Korea. So, yeah, I would love to do something like that. I wish I had a project that would be a long-term thing. Maybe the next thing with Marcelo will be.
Let's hope. And I guess a great way to bring us all the way around is the other project you have going on right now. And as everybody's listening to this, you probably have the day to check it out, unless you're doing late pledges, which we'll talk about in a minute. Is your Kickstarter, which is the book of Jusco or Jusco?
It's just good. I had to ask him. I've known Joe for 30 years, whatever, and I would say Jusco or Jusco, and he corrected me one time. He goes, "Joe, how long have you known me?" I said, "I know, but I'm confused." And he corrected me, and then immediately I forgot again. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was on the phone with him and said, "Joe, I am embarrassed to ask you this before we go to our next interview together. How do you pronounce your last name?" And I said, I've been embarrassed to ask you this, but he goes, "Okay." And so he told me, and I thought, okay, great, I've got it now, right? I hung up with him, and I was like, damn, I don't remember. I've confused myself again. So I called him right back up. I go, "Okay, I didn't call you again like this. How do you pronounce your last name again?" I've already forgotten. And he gave me a great way to remember. He said, as a kid, all kids are kind of cruel to each other, he would go out and be with this little group, and there was always tell them to go away. He says, so they'll say, just go away. Just go away. So that's how I remember it. So just go.
Okay.
Just go away.
Longtime listeners of this will know this, but I usually before the interview I ask especially if the interviewee has a difficult last name, just to make sure, is this how you pronounce your last name? Yeah, okay. And then there's been many times where within minutes I ask that question, I hit record, and I go, "Welcome to the show, blah blah blah," and I get it wrong again. So don't feel too bad.
That is. It's like, you hear it, but then you don't retain it.
I'm so worried about getting the intro of the show. It leaves the head. But yeah, so what is this book that you guys have on Kickstarter?
Okay, so we're doing a retrospective art book in his career. When I was doing this for our publishing, I did 10 volumes, different creators. I did Brian Bolland, which won the Eisner Award. The very first one I did, and then the second one was P. Craig Russell, nominated for the Eisner Award. I went, this is easy, right? And then I did Tim Bradstreet, Joe Jusko, Tony Harris, Jim Starlin, Jeffrey Jones, Dave Dorman, George Perez, and Amanda Connor. And they all very successful, and they're all a lot of fun. They're all my friends, and I enjoy doing them because, again, it's not writing, but it's a creative outlet. Because I designed them all myself and edited and designed them. What I loved about them is that they're all in the artist's voice. The artist did all the text and everything you read in them, except for the Jeffrey Catherine Jones one. Jeffrey was not able to do it at the time. He passed away shortly, not too long afterwards. So we did have somebody come in and do that text, but all the other 9 were this one. And so the same thing with Joe. So again, I wanted to do the art books again because I enjoy doing them. They're a lot of fun. I like having them on my bookshelves. I look online now, I go to eBay. I was just looking the day, we did one with Joe the first time, like in 2008, and they're like $350,000, and like the Spider-Man San Diego variant was somebody's asking $2,000. So I said, "What? Do I have any of these still?" No, I'm gonna go check my warehouse. But they're fun, and then so I was thinking of who I want to do again, or who I want to do the art book, and I had thought about Joe. Joe was going to be at Heroes Con in Charlotte last June, and I said I was going to come up to it, and so I walked up to Joe and said, "Hey," he goes, "I'm thinking about doing art books again. I think it's been 17 years since yours, 16 at the time." The thing with Joe, he's kept working, so he's got 16, 17 more years of work that wasn't in the first book. And he goes, "Well, I've been thinking about wanting to reach out to you because I want to do a new art book." I said, "We are on the same page." So that's how he got to be the first one because he was convenient to me to talk to, and he wanted me to do it in the first place. So I lined him up first, and Jim Starlin is going to be part of the second one. I'll do a new one with him because guys like this, not only did they have the careers dating back into the 70s, honestly. Now, Joe started working when he was like 17 years old, which is amazing. Starlin as well. But when I pick the subject for an art book, it has to be somebody who has a long career, who's got to be still relevant, I would say. Because you have to, the people who are going to buy it for the most part are going to be older people like myself or younger who knew these artists growing up that they have a fond memory of. And so even through Joe, we've sold the first one and went through 2 printings. He's got 17 more years and new fans. So that's how it came about. And again, but what we're doing this one, nothing that was in the first book. It was a 24 page book. Nothing in the first book is in the second book. And it's still going to be 250 pages, give or take. So it just tells you how much work he's done that I can do over 500 pages of art books on his career and still have leftovers.
For you putting together these art books, what you said it's in the artist's own voice. So does that mean
Right.
you kind of do a career retrospective along with it?
Yeah. So each page. Do I have one near me? I don't. If I did, I probably wouldn't work with the background I have on. But each page, say I have the image on the page, and then I'll have here's the title of the image, and then Joe would go in and write text about because he remembers everything he did. So this was this such and such. I did this using this technique, or it was published here, or I don't like the head here. Somebody corrected it, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's his own words talking about every piece in the book.
Interesting. And I see a lot of the preview pages you have up on the page are IP licenses. So how difficult is it putting this together with a bunch of artwork that's coming from different IPs?
You have to be careful with it. There's a fair use law where you can use X amount of percent that's trademarked and copyrighted, and I can't go over that percent. So if I'm using Marvel, DC, or Lucasfilm or whoever it happens to be, I can use, a certain amount percent of the book can be from them. That's why I can't go in and say, here's Joe's Savage Sword of Conan run, or here's every Marvel Masterpiece card he did. I can't do that because that's copyrighted. But we can select things out. And so there's going to be, Marvel stuff, there'll be DC stuff, etc., but only a certain amount of it. So a lot of it's going to be, private commissions and sketches that he's done. It's going to, it might be X amount percent of DC, X amount percent of Marvel, X amount percent of, Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff, because he's done a lot of covers for the books and novels. So I just have to go through, I have to count. I start to go through the book when it's laid out. I go, okay, how much percent do I have of this? How much percent do I have of that?
Run it by a lawyer real quick just to make sure, like, hey,
and
we're good.
And like the cover, the cover for the Red Sonja piece, that's a Dynamite Comics has that license, and so we just asked Nick Barucci, can we have permission to use it for the cover? And he politely said yes.
In your experience, is it easier to deal with a non-Marvel DC for a bit like the big cover like that?
Oh God, yeah. And no, if you go to Marvel DC and try to do, like for instance, the first one I mentioned earlier, is a Spider-Man cover. Joe did a homage to Spider-Man number 50, Amazing Spider-Man 50, where he's like throwing his Spider-Man suit in the trash can, is walking away. So apparently I did that when I was partnered with IDW. So IDW went to Marvel and got permission, and they had to pay a fee of some sort. And I know the guy who did that told me at one point it's the most expensive license he ever had or whatever. I'm like, what? Why'd you do that? So that's why we won't put a Spider-Man cover on the cover for any of my art books, or Jim Star. I won't put a Thanos cover on the cover because you have to get permission and you have to pay a fee. And so I'll stay within the free use law, and make because if I had to go pay all the license fees, it would be you can't ever make a profit. And none of us are doing this because we are doing it because we love it, but we also doing it because we need to make a living, and so so we can't just pay $30,000 fee for this or that every chance we get.
Yeah, so for the Jim Starlin book, like, don't expect a Infinity Gauntlet cover, maybe a Dreadstar.
Yeah, we did in the first one I did with him. We had a Dreadstar cover and a Breed cover because you know why, he owns those.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me. I don't own a ton of these art books, but I love flipping through them. It's something about, I mean, obviously us being comics fans, we like the pretty pictures, but there's something about all this collection of a person's career and work that is always intriguing to us as fans. And I'm guessing, based on how the Kickstarter's doing and that you've done a ton of these over the years, you see that these are very successful and popular.
Yeah, every one I've done is out of print. So and it's several going into multiple printings. So yeah, they're fun. They're nice to put in your bookshelf. It's artists who deserve a treatment like this to celebrate their career. It's good for them, and I just think they deserve it to be remembered or be honored in this format.
And was it, when you were thinking about bringing this back, did someone come to you with the idea of Kickstarter, or was it something that you saw that would be very successful?
It's something I've thought about doing for years, and I've just been too chicken to do it. It's a lot of work. I was like, I know I can make money doing this, but I don't know what I'm doing. It's a new for me. I've been a publisher at a couple of companies, own a couple of companies, editor-in-chief, et cetera, but I've never done something like this, and I was intimidated, to be honest. So I would talk to my friends who had done them, and they were like, yes, a lot of work, you have to do this and that. And so far, it's been okay. I partnered with Piranha, Adam Freeman's company, and because I am too chicken to do it on my own, especially the first time. And he's held my hand. They've held my hand and did a great job with me. Showed me their worth. Continue working with them going forward, because and let me focus on creating them, and just let them focus on me. Doing the campaigns. I'm involved in the campaign. Don't get me wrong, but I don't have to do the heavy lifting; they're doing it for me, and I really that eliminated a lot of the fear I had.
You were able to focus more on the stuff you love a little bit, and let
Exactly.
somebody else do the harder stuff,
Exactly. Yeah.
or
I don't have
the
to.
not so fun stuff.
Yeah, the business side of stuff. No,
Yeah.
I'm still doing some business, but they're doing most of the business. And again, I'd rather be on the creative side and not have to worry about every detail. I've had to do that in my career, and this time in my life, I just don't want to have to do every detail anymore.
And do you know if they're going to do late pledges for the campaign after it's done?
I believe we have a set up for late pledges. Yes.
Okay, good. So everybody out there listening will have a second chance if you listen to this late or something like that. But yeah, I mean, the book of Jusko looks good. The Vikings, Viking Moon book looks amazing. I mean, you got a lot of cool stuff coming out, and it sounds like you have even more that we didn't talk about or maybe hasn't been announced yet. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy to see you getting back out there. It looks, all the stuff
Thank
looks
you.
really cool. If everybody out there wanted to find you, follow you further, is there a place you like to send them? Do you do social media? Do you have newsletter or something like that?
The only social media I'm really doing right now is just I'm on Facebook. I was on Twitter. I'm sorry, X. I'm not there anymore. I never used it anyway. I just don't have the bandwidth to be on 5 different platforms at one time. I can barely do one. I much rather spend my time creating and putting these books together and writing some scripts than spend the time with my kids and grandkids, as opposed to making sure I update every platform, five different platforms every day. So Facebook's me. I mean, I may start a joepruett.com at some point. I bought the rights for that. I just have never done anything with it because, again, I'm not lazy, but I am lazy. I'm lazy when it comes to doing stuff I don't know how to do, like set up a website. But as far as like doing anything else in the business, I'm working all the time. But
Yeah.
I want to work on the fun stuff, not the tedious stuff.
So I guess the best place to send people to that Kickstarter page. You can follow Joe on there to see what's next when that Jim Starlin book's coming out or something else. And I guess just keep Googling the name and eventually you'll see the announcements.
Yeah,
Or listen to the
ideal-
show and we'll talk about it here.
Yeah. Ideally, I like to do an art book like every 3 or 4 months. So like
Very
every
cool. So
quarter.
probably beginning of next year we can expect the next one.
Yeah, I think January might be a good. If it's be 3 months, it will be December. But I don't think I want to do one in Christmas season. So I think I'll wait till right after Christmas is over with, and not have to compete with all that.
Yeah, December's usually a dead zone for Kickstarter.
Yeah, I would think so. I'm not sure how deep January does. I know in publishing, you probably want to stay away from January, but I never really understood that myself. It doesn't scare me. So I think January will probably be the next Kickstarter.
Yeah, I think you're seeing across all mediums that people are flocking more to January because it's so empty. It seems like a place to shine.
Why not? Exactly.
So, Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you, talking to
Yeah,
you.
you too.
Like I said, I'm really looking forward to these projects. So, everybody out there listening, watching, check out the show notes down below. I'll have links to both these projects so that you can find them. And then Viking Moon, obviously, go to your local comic shop and tell them that you want a copy, however they can get it. Or just walk in next Wednesday and hopefully they got a copy on the rack for you. So, yeah, Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Best
anytime,
of luck
my
with
friend.
both these books.
Thank you so much.